customer service, done right, can be your company's single biggest competitive advantage. Welcome to the Customer Service Revolution. Join customer service authority and best-selling author John DiJulius as he interviews leaders who are revolutionizing their industries. This is more than a podcast, though. It's a movement. The Customer Service Revolution is a radical overthrow of conventional business mentality designed to transform what customers and employees experience. If you are a revolutionary customer service leader who's ready to stop competing on price and obsessed with building a brand that people cannot live without, this podcast is for you. Welcome to the Customer Service Revolution podcast with John DiJulius. In this episode, John talks with Stephen Kearley, the president of Ontario, Canada's Benson IFG, a financial service company known for being a world-class customer service organization. In this week's podcast, you'll learn how Kearley's lifelong obsession for learning allowed his firm to grow far past its original goal, what he feels was the best professional decision he's ever made, how Benson Kearley truly sets themselves apart from anyone else in the industry, what their customer service vision statement is, and how he empowers his leaders to take risks and own the internal and external experience at Benson Kearley. Now here's your host, John DiJulius.
Hello, revolutionaries. This is John DiJulius, Chief Revolution Officer of the DiJulius Group, and I want to welcome you to another episode of the Customer Service Revolution podcast. Today, I have a longtime friend and client, Mr. Stephen Kearley. Welcome, Steve.
Thanks, John. It's great to be chatting with you again.
It is so great. So we go way back almost 20 years. And you are a super successful business owner, great vision. I've been fortunate to work with a lot of really successful businesses and CEOs. And the reason why I just wanted you to be on here, I think so many people, leaders, can learn. We all have vision. We all have goals, but the way you've executed and built it on purpose, empowered your employees, built a world-class customer experience culture. There's so many things that I want to get into. So that's really what I like to get in and have people be inspired by your story. So Steve, tell our audience kind of your story and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, great. So a lot of my story aligns with the Entrepreneurs Organization. I'm sure a lot of your listeners are either members or very familiar with EO. Some it'll be new, but I really do look at that organization, and I don't want to be over dramatic, but it did change my life without being over dramatic about it.
And I agree with that. I heard someone call it as an entrepreneur's therapy group, right? Like,
that's exactly what it is.
It really is. It really is. I tell people it was one of the best professional decisions, and I could probably throw out the word professional, because as you know, if you don't know EO or YPO, you only deal with other entrepreneurs. Yeah. And if we're in the same group, I don't have to explain to you that I have no time. My wife is mad at me. My kids don't recognize me. I'm worried about making cash flow. We all share that. And sorry for jumping you. And it's probably more the personal that I've shared and learned from each other of how do you have balance? How do you not bring it home and take it out on your loved ones when you want to just crawl up in the fetal position? So sorry.
Yeah, no, and you just described it. So you made a very good point. Best professional decision you ever made, joining EO. And I would say the exact same thing. That was my goal when I joined EO. I felt like I was flying by the seat of my pants. I didn't go to university. I started my first business in high school and just kept running with it. University was always the plan, but I kind of ran out of time. And so I spent my early years kind of learning, the school of hard knocks. But the evolution of that decision to join for professional reasons also became the best personal decision I ever made. And so what I mean by that is the friendships, ours included. I was sharing with you earlier, going on a trip down to Cabo with 15 EOers and their wives. It's not an EO event, but we're just great friends. We look for opportunities to get together once or twice a year, and it almost becomes a great giant forum experience on the beach, if you will.
Yeah.
Because, entrepreneurs, you're one, you're always talking, you're always looking for ideas, you're always sharing. Like you throw out around the table or on the beach that, hey guys, here's something I'm struggling with. What'd you guys do? And then of course, everyone's eager to share their experience and
good and bad, right? Sometimes it'll be like, here's what I did and don't do it because it was the worst thing. And that's sometimes more valuable because that'll save you millions, not repeating. Yeah.
I'd rather learn by their mistakes than mine.
Right.
Yeah. But
EOers are salt to the earth. And the cool thing is, like, there's a EO chapter basically in every major city in the world. And, you could call up and you're going to Toronto where Steve, you're from and your business is from. And, I don't, I don't have to know you, but I saw that you're in the EO chapter and I'm coming to Toronto. I need some advice for, and EOers are like, I'll pick you up at the airport. I'll make the reservation. I got a buddy that owns the best restaurant. I'll take care of that. It's like a concierge program of just networking, but not networking and hire me, no. But just a sphere of influence.
You want to learn from me. That's basically the bottom line.
Right.
That's the magic.
They're generous, the most generous people.
Yeah. So joining EO, my business, we did about $6 million in annual sales a year.
And let's explain your business real quick.
Okay, so I'm in the primarily commercial insurance, property and casualty side of the business. I guess we do have a significant personal lines, house, car, cottage, boat, motorcycles. We have a significant practice on the personal line side, but our primary focus is commercial. I wanted to grow it to 10 million. And again, as I said earlier, I felt like I was flying by the seat of my pants, joined EO because I wanted some more structure. I wanted to learn. And, one of my values in life is lifelong learning. And I want to continue to learn. One of my favorite quotes I ever heard was Henry Ford. And he said, "It's what I learned after I knew it all that has set me apart from my competitors." And so
say that again. It's what I learned after I knew it all
that has set me apart from my competitors.
I love that. Oh my God.
And that's stayed with me for years and years. And so I thought, if I can get this to $10 million, I'm on easy street, right? And, I'll make a nice living and life is good. And, it's a business that it's about relationships. So every day is different, whether you're entertaining clients at the hockey game or taking them out golfing or just, visiting in their office or whatever pre-COVID, of course. It's just a good relationship business. And I'm a very outgoing individual. I'm a social creature. So, that's where I get my energy from, is being with other people. And so anyway, I joined EO and I have learned a ton. It's changed my life. And again, I don't want your listeners here to think, oh, he's just being dramatic. It did. It really did.
No. Something else, Steve, I bet you'll agree with. My EO forum members, which, is your local group that you meet with on a regular basis. For those who don't know EO, that group that I was officially in with 15 years, but still get together with, they know things that no one else in my life, best friend, significant other. I don't know what that says, but there's just that, that sharing, confidential sharing, non-judgment, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't want this to be a commercial for you.
No. But you're right. And it's, yeah.
So, what I learned is I got to create a strong foundation. And,
it can't just be you, meaning it can't be based on Steve and the business.
Yeah. What I learned was a lot of the bottleneck in growing my business was actually me, right? Because at a $6 million company, we weren't overly large. We didn't have a ton of scale or budget. So I had to wear a lot of hats. And when I realized that, there's things I'm just not good at, There's things I'm not interested in being good at, and there's things I'm great at. And I want to focus on the things I'm great at.
Right. Because when you're wearing the other hats, that's taken away from the hats you should be wearing.
You got it.
I know that painfully.
Yeah. So I realized as we were growing that I needed to get out of my own way. And even though I couldn't afford it at the time, I brought in someone to manage and operate the daily operations of my business. So I could focus on, all right, how am I going to grow this? How am I going to get this from $6 to $10 million?
And how long ago was this, Steve, when you first gave up the day-to-day reins or, the OCD of micromanaging?
Yeah, I would say it was about 2003.
Okay.
And that's very important as well, because that's right in the middle of my Birthing of Giants experience, the program at MIT that EO operates. That is now called Entrepreneurial Masters Program, EMP for short. It was kind of my epiphany moment where I sat in a class with guys like Brian Scudamore from 1-800-GOT-JUNK, Marcus New, InvestX, Barrett Ersick, who had his epiphany moment at BOG, Birthing of Giants, and exponentially grew his business. And I'm sitting in that classroom, and I went to that program again, just to kind of continue learning. And again, don't forget, my goals were to get from $6 to $10 million. I left that first year class going, I am so undervaluing what we can do. I need to be thinking a lot bigger. And so not only did I get some great learning and things I could implement in the business right away, I came away with something far more important. And that was the permission to think bigger. And that's what BOG gave me, was the permission to think bigger. I'm sitting in a room with guys that they want to drive their businesses to billions of dollars. I was sitting there thinking $10 million is going to be great. Well, that changed really quickly. My goals changed really quickly. I started working on a plan to hire somebody to run my business. And it doesn't happen overnight. But if you work on a plan, you've got goals, you've got a vision, then you start executing. Without goals and vision, you're not going to execute anything, because it's like getting in your car and not having a destination. You don't know where you're going.
But you needed the implementer to help you, because goals and visions by themselves are a waste, right? They're just dreams and fantasies.
Exactly. Goals and visions without action are dreams.
Yeah.
And so, but recognizing I'm not a detailed person. My execution on day-to-day, like policy and process, that's just not me. I need somebody that has that skill set. And again, building a business, sales, networking for the right reasons, by the way, not just to what can I get from you. That's the wrong motive to network. So that's a whole topic on itself. It was understanding what I needed to do in the business, understanding where my bottlenecks were, understanding that I was a bottleneck. That's when I really started to see some growth in the business. So we blew from 6 to 12 million really, really quickly. We've got a strong foundation in place. And at $12 million, we made our first significant acquisition because I was confident with the management team I had in place at the time. We acquired a business doing $36 million in revenue.
Wow. So David bought Goliath.
Yes.
Wow.
Everyone looked at us going, A, how did that happen? And B, are you crazy?
Right.
But I was confident with the team I had built, with the things I had learned at both Birthing of Giants and in my EO forum and the learning opportunities EO gave me, that I was confident that this is a team, we could do this. So we went from 12 to 48 million overnight.
You bought a company 3 times your size.
Exactly.
That's crazy.
But you know what? What I learned about acquisitions, and we do acquisitions all the time now, we've got it down to a science, is, bringing 2 organizations together, we were able to reduce expenses dramatically because of redundant positions, dual locations, all kinds of overlaps. And so we were in that first year alone, after doing that acquisition, we drove $1.6 million in expenses out the door. And ended up with a really solid, strong team. We took the best of both organizations. So I looked at dual redundant roles. So if I had a manager in this department and they had a manager in this department, I sat back and I watched them both perform. And I said, you know what, we're going to take the best. So it's not that Benson Kearley IFG, we're now known as Benson Kearley IFG. At the time, we were Benson Kearley and Associates. It wasn't that, all my people are protected. It's, we're going to go in and we're going to find the best people out of bringing these two organizations together, which I think is what most goals are when we're doing an acquisition. But it's funny how sometimes the organization doing the acquiring just gets complacent as well. We're the acquirer. Right. So
it's our way.
You guys are now part of us.
Right.
We didn't take that approach at all. But, and that was really what got us scale. And so scale is so important because now you have budget to reinvest back in technology, to hire people that are going to cost you more. That as a smaller business, as a $12 million business, I couldn't think of hiring some of the talent I was able to hire when we became a $48 million business. And so we continued to ramp up. And then, it was probably in and about that time, just as we did that acquisition, that I met you at the Chicago University, EO University, which for those who don't know, EO runs their conferences twice a year. We call them universities. So that's when I had never met you, had never even heard of you. And I was looking at the agenda for some speakers in the afternoon, and I saw yours was on customer service. I thought, that should be interesting. Went in, and it was like drinking from the fire hose, and got just a ton of ideas about how we could up our customer service game. I still remember in your very early presentations that the Lexus, you shared the story about the Lexus loaner, where your buddy had taken in his old Lexus to get fixed, and they gave him a brand new one as a loaner.
Right.
And he goes, no, I'm going to buy this one.
Yeah. When they called him back to say your car's ready, he said, keep it.
Exactly.
Yeah. He was convinced 3 women checked him out on, driving it. So,
Anyway, and it was shortly after that we really upped our customer service game. And so you came in and worked with my team. Our Secret Service team now continues to attend your Customer Service Revolution conference every year. Unfortunately for us, the last couple of years with the borders being what they were, we weren't able to send them live, but they participated still. And I think 0405 is when we first connected, and still very engaged with your organization because we get so much value out of it. And so we constantly, like any organization, we have a turnover. And so when we bring new people into the organization, we want them fully indoctrinated into our customer service brand promise, which we've developed with our customer service, Secret Service team, And so it's become a cornerstone of who we are. Is we invest in it, we live it.
And what is that brand promise, that customer service brand promise?
Well, so it's different in each department, but I'll just give you the commercial one, for example, is our brand promise is we are going to make you a better business. So it's nothing about saving. If you become a client of Benson Kearley, we're going to save you money. We're going to give you a better insurance policy. That's a table stake. That's what every broker should.
Any website I go to, any broker I call will tell me the exact same thing.
Exactly. So we knew we had to be different. So our commitment to you is we want to help you become a better business. And so you've spoken at one of our seminars. So we do an annual seminar for our clients on anything but insurance.
So I want to interrupt you right there because this is something that was brilliant. So you have brought me out several times to speak to your team.
Yep.
But one year you brought me out to speak to your clients, which was just so brilliant. I don't know, that may be something you put on every year, but just talk about that gift to your clients and the loyalty that makes them exactly what your brand promise is, bringing in subject matter experts that have nothing to do with what you sell, right? What Benson Kearley IFG sells, but you're making them better. They're bringing their teams to get better at the topic you're presenting, and that loyalty and emotional gratitude towards you.
That's exactly right. So when they're sitting there and looking at, how they're becoming a better business, and so obviously they're going to look at us. They're saying, "Hey, Benson Kearley's providing this," and I was with this other brokerage for years, and they never talked about anything like this. And so we want to be different. We want to be different. When you look at it that way, it creates stickiness for your clients to go, hey, look at, maybe we're paying a little more. Maybe we're not. I don't know. But I'm not even going to go to the market because I like what they're providing us. So that's going to evolve to a website. So we're going to create a website that libraries, maybe you would put on a podcast for us for customer service, or maybe I'd get Warren Rustin to talk about leadership, or Vern Harnish to talk about scaling up, or any number of topics, and get subject matter experts and create a library where our clients can go on a consistent basis. So if our clients are, maybe they're sitting down in November and they're struggling with their sales and they want to put a good sales program together in 2022, well, I want to give them resources that they can tap into and go and listen to a podcast or go and listen to a presentation just for our clients that subject matter experts do for us, or great articles that have been written. We do our Risk and Business magazine, which again has very, very little to do with insurance. It has everything to do with content around becoming a better business.
Right. And so when I ask someone, I could see this and I love this. And this is why I've written about you guys in multiple books because of the best practice. Yeah. So when I go to someone and says, man, that's a great best practice, or that's a great this, where'd you learn about that? And they tell me from their insurance guy, broker.
Yeah.
Why? That's not their job. Exactly. Exactly. It's not their job, but they are that concerned with the success of our business that they teach us or give us resources. And I always use this. Are you and your, and this will age us, you'll understand what I'm talking about, but some of my younger listeners may not. I always say, are you in your client's foxhole, right? Every CEO has a personal, professional foxhole. Personal, the world's going to get attacked tonight, or our country. I'm taking my significant other, and depending on the day, probably all three of my boys, right? And I got that personal foxhole. The professional foxhole, I only have room for 2, maybe 3 vendor partners. How sure are you, the business, that you have a spot in my profession, that I can't fathom life without you tomorrow, starting over or whatever? And that's exactly. You are a resource to them. You are not only the smartest at what you do, but you also find out what's important to them, non-related to what you do, and you make introductions. You do. I mean, that's what it just blows me away. And trust me, Steve, I love the credit, but I think this it was definitely in your DNA long before you met me. The gold here is how you made it part of everyone that joined your firm in their DNA.
Well, and ultimately, my vision for my business is not to become the largest. It would almost be impossible. There's some really big players in Canada. I don't want to be the largest. I don't have any goal to be the largest, but I want to be the best. And so I want, when people are choosing where they want to do business, when people are choosing where they want to work, when insurance companies are choosing who they want to do business with, I want our name to be top of mind every time. And so, we're not perfect, but we're working every day to get better. And so ultimately, a rising tide floats all boats. And so if we just continually to work to be better, our customers are going to say, wow, this is a good experience. This is, like, to your point, why is my insurance broker helping me become a better business? You know why? Because it's the right thing to do, right? You're kind of selfish if you spend 20 years learning something and just keep it to yourself.
Right.
I had a couple of young guys approached me. They just started insurance brokerage a few years ago, and they asked if I would mentor them. I said, sure, love to. I'd actually enjoy that. And, when my management team, because I would go in and share everything. I say,
define young, Steve.
Oh, okay. Probably about 20 or so years younger than I am.
I'm like anyone under 30, I call a kid. But you're right. That's a different mentality. It's a different mentality, right or wrong. It's a complete different mentality than our generation we were raised.
the thing that impressed me the most, the thing that made me say yes right away was they were smart enough to understand they wanted a mentor.
Yes.
Right? Which I think everybody should have a mentor, right? You go find that sage old wise individual in your space or where you want to grow and just approach them. You'd be surprised how many people will say yes.
And that's one of, I say, my greatest things I did early on, and hopefully I still do, is I would call people I had no right calling, and I was, nothing, and say, can I just have 5 minutes of your time? And they were the most generous people. And like we were talking about, if it was before the podcast or live, but they would say, they would tell me the worst practices, and it would help me get to where they were in half the time it took them because of their generosity, mentorship. And I just couldn't believe, but that's why me and you do that to anyone that asks us.
Yeah, you know what? And so my management team actually got mad at me. They'd say, well, what are you talking to them about? I'm saying everything. I'm telling them everything we do. Are you crazy? Like, why would you do that? Well, first thing, what I've learned is only 5% of people will hear a great idea and implement it. So they're probably not going to copy everything we do. However, if they do, great, so be it. You know what? They are growing as a business. They are creating jobs. They're being a positive impact in their community. They're probably giving back in their communities. So, you know what? Great. Why wouldn't I want other brokerages to succeed? It's not going to change anything we do.
By the time they get to where you were, you're going to be somewhere else. Yeah.
And so, you look at those types of things in life, and I've got a great mentor, Mr. Warren Rustan. He helps me get through some challenging situations. And so I look at it and go, well, I've got some experience. Why shouldn't I have an obligation to give back? And so I've had some fun over the years becoming a mentor, but at the end of the day, we're always evolving. Like I said earlier, I always want to learn. I always want to be better. And until I decide that I've done it, I've had enough, I want to sit on that beach in Florida. Not really, because I'll probably spend more time on the golf course than on the beach. I'm just going to continue to drive and grow the business and become better. And so it's resources that I've learned and been exposed to through EO, getting back to that EO commercial, that we've implemented. And, as you know, I sitting in on your presentation in the Chicago University, we're still doing it, right? From 2004 till today.
Well, that's something I wanted to bring up, and goes to the way you empower your people to take ownership. It doesn't have to be Steve, and he doesn't have to micromanage it. So I don't know if it was the first or second time you brought me in to speak to your team, but before we started, you or your group had to go around the room and talk about what I call a Secret Service allowance they spent the last month. I don't know if that's what you call it.
Well, we call it that now because you coined the phrase. We just said, hey, it's giving back to our clients, but you coined the phrase. But yeah, we're still doing it. And
so let me tell real quick, you can tell how it works. But so we're going around the room, and every account executive, lack of a better word, and correct me if it's not right, had to get up and explain how they spent their $25 Secret Service allowance last month on their clients. And I say it's this positive burden that they have to spend. And, I remember, hearing the stories. One person said, Mrs. Smith called in and I found out her aunt died and, sent her flowers. Someone else said, I actually used my $25 allowance on 5 different clients. I bought them each $5 Tim Horton cards, your Starbucks. And one was because he got promoted. One was because their son just got accepted into university. All these different reasons. And I was like, wow. But it's a burden in a good way of, you're my client, you're calling up, they ask me a trivial question I can answer in 2 seconds. But I'm listening, I'm paying attention. I'm hoping a dog barks, a baby cries, something, because I have to, spend my allowance. And so I'm in tune. I'm seeing things I don't normally see. And I've written about that and shared it, and we've copied it in the DiJulius Group. And, we have to do that now. And better than at least my opinion, Steve, better than the client receiving that, gift and he or she doesn't even remember telling you about their daughter graduating is the employee, what they feel like. They go home and they know they've made a few people's day today. And the day maker always feels the best at the end of the day.
And you're right. And that's kind of my initial motivation to implement that was so that my employees would feel a sense of, giving back. Right. And so they would feel better about themselves. But then, of course, you wouldn't believe the number of people that reach out to me, clients, and say, hey, just got this $25 gift certificate or a gas card or for whatever reason. What a real nice touch. Right. $25 isn't going to change anybody's life. But
Steve, we got people listening right now, probably CFOs, but someone saying, wait a minute, I got 50 account executives, 50 times 25 times 12. That you're taking all my profit out of this.
Yeah. Guess what? We have about 50. They're account managers. They're the customer service people. We have about 50, and that's what we do. Spend $25 a month. Yeah. So it does add up, but it's still in the grand scheme of things.
Compare that to an advertisement on a billboard or SEO searches or,
And guess what else happens is the recipient, might tell their buddy or their family or somebody, we got this week, I got a $25 gift card just because whatever the reason.
Right.
They tell
and they say, wait a minute, isn't that the same guy that you learned, that great new sales technique? He brought in some speaker, Jack Daly or someone. Yeah. Why are they doing that? That's not their job.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's to your earlier point. That's exactly why we're doing that, because it isn't our job.
Right. But the return on investment on that, because it's personal, because your people are writing it saying, dear Mrs. Jones, I'm sorry about, or congratulations on. And we're not just sending everyone a blind, coupon somewhere.
Hi, this is Denise Thompson, managing partner of the DiJulius Group. We know it can be difficult getting the whole team as excited as you are about customer experience. You talk to them, write newsletters, and it seems to go in one ear and out the other. Sometimes it's the message, sometimes it's the messenger, sometimes it's just a tough crowd. Consider bringing John in to speak live at your next company or association event. He'll have them laughing, crying, cheering, and most importantly, understanding how to become world-class. Visit johndijulius.com for details or to book your date now.
Something else I wanted to touch on was you've had a speaker at your customer service revolution, Ron Lovett.
Yeah, another Canadian.
You got to fly that flag proud because a lot of reasons why we can be a little bit embarrassed right now with everything we're going through. But you know what? At the heart of it, Canadians are very loyal to each other, and
yes,
and Ron's a great guy. But at the end of the day, Ron took a very old staid industry and he revolutionized it, and he calls it giving employees back their brains. So how that can, it's just empowering your employees. So you talked about how we're empowering our employees. We want to take it one step further. So I just brought Ron into our strategic planning session, planning for 2022. And he went through with my management team. Now I've sat through with Ron a number of times, and we talk about this a lot. I'm going to bring him into the MIT program to speak. But it really is about giving your employees the ability to think and really empowering them. And so
Steve, let's talk about first, because that is the solution, and I love it. What we've done, corporate America, whatever, how we've taken their brain and creativity, and we've made them basically robots, right?
Exactly.
Here's a checklist. Ask her this, and be off the phone in less than 2 minutes and 30 seconds.
Right. And
who wants to work for that?
Why would you? Right. It wouldn't work for anyone anyway. But that's besides the point. At the end of the day, it's about giving your employees a path, right? Giving them something that they can say, this is so much different than that old place I used to work at. They never allowed me to make decisions. And so what we're going to implement, it's a big transition, but I really want to implement a culture and an environment that my employees don't have to ask anybody to make a decision. And I mentioned to you earlier is there's 3 questions that become the filter. Number 1 question, I got to make a decision. Is it good for the customer? If the answer is yes, is it good for the company, the business? If the answer is yes, next question. Am I prepared to accept responsibility for the decision I make? If you answer those 3 questions, yes, 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 you don't have to ask anybody about the decision you're about to make. We will support it 100%. Even if it ends up being the wrong decision and costs me some money, that's irrelevant. How much more value do I get by allowing my employees to become the decision maker, not having to run to a supervisor or a manager, and then in turn they're going to go to their manager, and you know, it makes no sense to me that we haven't figured this out years and years and years ago. It's pretty much common sense, but as we know,
you know, it's not, sadly. And I love all 3 questions. I love how you spun off from the last one, meaning the failure part, right? Reward failures. You know, hey, I want to recognize Doug for this good idea that worked, but I really want to recognize Joanna. She took a shot. And while that didn't necessarily work, I think we're on to something with a few tweaks, could be a major revenue stream or whatever. But when you celebrate people taking risk, right?
Yeah.
I love
that's
that.
Very entrepreneurial. That's kind of moving your employees into entrepreneurial thinking, right? They're not entrepreneurs, they don't own the business, but I want them to feel like they have ownership in the decisions they make, and you know, just allowing them to, whether it's a small decision or a big decision. Again, at the end of the day, how can you punish somebody for making for something not working, but they did it with the right motives? And to your point, 9 times out of 10, it's going to work out for the best. You're going to have failure. Nobody's right 100% of the time.
Right.
So just accept that you're going to have fail. And by the way, Brian Scudamore wrote a great book. I'm sure you've read it. WTF, Willing to Fail.
Yes.
Right. And he talks in this book about all the things in life he failed at that made him successful. And so why wouldn't we do that with our employees? Give them the opportunity to fail to become successful.
Right.
And back them, support them.
Right. And now we're not, assembly line workers, white collar assembly line workers, just putting widgets into holes, and you go home and you're not making businesses better. You're not, a couple of things that there's more than a couple of things. Any crisis provides opportunities. And some of the things that have come from the pandemic is there has been a professional awakening, and people are just like, if you don't give me some freedom and, it's just mind numbing tasks. Also, the other thing is bringing back the purpose to their job, tying their role to the overall purpose that they can impact. And not by, like you said, systematizing, overstructure, and following, but allowing me to have some input and creativity to doing that for my client and not having to ask permission or be worried that I'm going to get my hand slapped. I love that.
Unfortunately, that's the culture most people come out of.
It is. I don't know where it went.
Without getting it signed off by this person.
Right. The red tape. Right? The red tape is crazy. Why haven't we called the customer back? Because I'm still waiting for, Joanna to tell me if it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Something else I wrote about in my books, and we tell people in presentations all the time about one of your best practices, and you have so many, but I don't even know if you know this. This is what makes you a great leader, is you empowered. You have like a Secret Service customer experience team. I know you know that. Steering committee, they meet regularly and they come out with stuff. And so they didn't only launch, collecting Ford and family occupation recreation. They made it a theme for the month. And they tied it, and I'm telling you, because I really don't know if you know, but I'm sure you know, this is years ago, but they tied it to when one of the Star Wars movies was being launched.
That's right.
And I remember the theme was called May the Ford Be With You.
Right.
And they tracked how many of your employees were updating Ford each day from having, all right, so I had a call with Stephen Kearley today, and then they'd go into your CRM system and say, John, you didn't update any Ford. That he played golf. He's going to Florida. He's going to Cabo. You didn't update anything, or you did 8 out of 10, and you had prizes and stuff. And I mean, you guys just do, just to reinforce those positive behaviors and not just state them and expect everyone to follow them. I love the things you empowered your teams to come up with.
Yeah. And, sometimes it takes a little bit of work, right? You got to spend a little bit of extra time on the phone with the client to say, to kind of dig a little, probing questions. You certainly don't want people to feel like you're digging into their personal life.
Right.
There's things that they share that, let's make a note of that. Oh, just bought a new sailboat. So clearly sailing's a big passion.
Right.
Recreation.
And you know that in your line of business, because that's why I'm calling, I have to insure it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that a lot of businesses, we find out anyway. Or I could say, all right, Steve, same time next week. And you say, no, I'm going to be in Cabo next week. Now, one person, can be like, okay, how about 2 weeks from today? Yeah. But if you have that Secret Service allowance, if you have the Ford tab, now I'm typing in and I'm going to do something with that information, whether at the very least 2 weeks from today, Steve, how was your trip to Cabo? Or if you're a VIP, we're going to say, Steve, where are you staying? I've always wanted to stay at Cabo. And you're going to tell me, we're going to have, a bottle of wine and cheese in your room, right? I mean, those are the great opportunities that you create for your team members, which again goes back to their day makers. Yep. They didn't just respond. They weren't in your term, a hockey goalie, just deflecting all these requests coming at them. How'd I do on hockey there? Hockey's a little stretch for me.
Yeah, and thanks for bringing that in, because as a Canadian, it's near and dear to my heart. I've got a son playing professional hockey right now.
Yes.
Like to get down there and watch him as often as I can. But, even having this conversation with you here today kind of gives me energy, because, there's so many great things about the business, and it's easy, especially going through the last 20 months that we're all going through. It's kind of easy to get a little down but opportunities like this, you kind of sit back and go, yeah, you know what? We are doing some pretty cool things, but how do we grow them, and how do we make them better, and how do we evolve and create more opportunities? So I think any entrepreneur and most CEOs really get energy out of making their businesses better. And so it can't all just be about the bottom line and making the shareholder money. It can't be about that, because that's
one of your recipes for making businesses better is that you are a lifelong obsessive student. Right. And it goes back to your Henry Ford quote. What was that about? Yeah.
After I knew it all.
Right. And listen, when you hit 10 million, when you hit 48 million, right, you could say, I'm done. Right. I've conquered. But you're still going to conferences, reading books. And that's why you keep on moving the needle. And, the thing that your team members need to do is, when I've worked with Price Waterhouse or Starbucks, they love that Secret Service allowance, or the May the Ford Be With You game. These world-class billion-dollar companies are learning from this little, brokerage firm in, Ontario, Canada. And that's what's cool.
Yeah. And listen, if we can impact, we also do this great program we came up with years ago, where we bring families together at Christmas. So we'll pay to fly families back to the Toronto area from all over the world, and get them.
Are these families of your employees? Who are these?
No. They've been
charitable.
We just put out a bunch of marketing and advertising. We call it Home for the Holidays, where we will bring families back. You don't have to be a client. You don't have to get a quote. As a matter of fact, our employees aren't eligible. We do other things for them. But, we bring families together at Christmas, because as you and I, the holiday season is so important to both of us. We bring our families together. It's a great time to.
We take it for granted. You're right. We take it for granted.
Take a deep breath. And so it became apparent to me probably about 15 years ago where, as much as I enjoy it, not everyone gets to enjoy that. And it's usually financial. Not always, but usually. So we thought, well, let's impact 2 or 3 families. We can't do it for everyone, but let's bring families together. And so we asked them to write an essay. And I have a panel of judges that are completely outside of my business. I've got someone from the clergy, a homemaker, a business person, and a student. And that's my judge panel. And they read these essays and they say, you gotta grant this one. You gotta grant this. And so we always end up granting more than we budget for because, you read these stories and some of them are just heartbreaking. We gotta do that. I remember a family coming back to the office in February, said, Steve, we just got to talk to you. So they had a daughter who lived out west in Alberta. For those who don't know the geography of Canada, just north of Montana. And they live in the Toronto area. We're a bedroom community of Toronto. And she just lost her husband. Mm-hmm. And then they had another daughter and her husband that lived just north of Seattle in British Columbia. And they clearly, they said, we'd love to have the family back together for Christmas. And so they applied for the program and through our social media, and we granted them. And so we brought the widowed daughter and the daughter and her husband back to Newmarket. And they came to my office in February with a picture. And they gave me this picture and they said, we can't thank you enough. In the picture was the 2 daughters, the son-in-law, the husband and wife, and grandma sitting in this picture. And it was a lovely Christmas picture. And they shared with me that grandma died in January. And thank you so much for the opportunity for our family to get together one last time.
Jeez.
And, you look at that. So what does that say to our employees? And where I was going with this story was a good friend of mine in my EO forum said, Steve, I hope you don't mind, but we're going to copy your idea. We're going to change it a little bit, but we're going to bring families back together at Christmas. Do you have any problem with that? I said, problem with that? Jeez. I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled that what we're doing is rubbed off on you, and now you can make an impact on other people. And so this is, imitation is the best form of flattery. And you look at, I said, if what we do can influence a Starbucks or a Lexus or a Ritz-Carlton, then mission accomplished, right? If we can make change, I think in my bio, it says that Benson Kearley is a committed, conscious capitalist company. And we live that. And so our business does not exist solely for the shareholder. It exists for 5 stakeholders: our customers, our employees, the community, our suppliers, and the shareholder. And we believe each 5 of those stakeholders should benefit from Benson.
Let's say them again, Steve. Customer, clients.
The customer, our employees, the community, our suppliers. So in our case, most of our suppliers are insurance companies, and the shareholder. So not just the shareholder, but 5 stakeholders. And when you make decisions, when you want to run a business based on how do these stakeholders benefit, not just the shareholder, then you start doing things like we're talking about today, the Secret Service allowance, the investing back in our employees, the opportunity to give our employees their brains back. I don't share that phrase with them, but that's exactly what we're trying to accomplish, is let them grow as people and really allow them to start thinking outside the box. And then the community, we're huge. We love to give back to the community, whether it's scholarships for entrepreneurial high school students, or we've got a great scholarship program with at-risk youth that we're very involved with. It's just what we should be doing, because you know what? It's the right thing to do. So that helps us get out of bed every morning to say, hey, we're not just going to make some money today. We're going to change people's lives today. And that sounds very weird coming from an insurance guy, right? Insurance guy, it's a very negative industry. Nobody likes to pay their insurance premiums, but everyone has to for whatever reason. So we want to change the narrative and say, yeah, but that Benson Kearley, they're an insurance company, but look at all the good they're doing.
Well, and Steve, you opened with your customer service brand promise. We're going to make you a better business, and then listening to all the things you do and the 5 stakeholders that you're trying to impact and the charity and home for the holidays and all that. I think it's an easy, we are going to make your life better, right? And you're doing that. You're doing that for your employees. You're doing it for the community you serve. I mean, you're doing it for so many people besides just being an order taker or a price quoter, which so many other people are. And you could back it up, right? Again, you could see that on other people's websites, but there's very few people in any line of work that can back it up. And, one of the things pre-COVID, when I'd walk into your buildings, you felt something. You felt a pulse, an energy that you didn't have to take surveys of how people, treated each other, and they knew that, what they were there for. It was a higher purpose. Yeah. This is awesome.
We're just doing what we can, right? At the end of the day, we're doing what we can, but we're always striving to be better. I want to be known as a world-class customer service organization, and you got to invest. It just doesn't happen, and it doesn't happen by default. It's got to be by design. We got to wake up at the beginning of every year and say, how do we improve on our customer service offering? Because otherwise, it's just going to happen by default. So we're very aware of it. With the Secret Service team created a list of what we will always do, what we will never do. It's you got to make it by design.
And you've done that, and I love your vision. I love your implementation. I love how you've created great leaders underneath you, that it's not dependent on Steve being there. One of my favorite quotes, and I probably say that, 100 different times, especially about, an entrepreneur, is an entrepreneur needs to be the least valuable short-term asset a company has. And so many entrepreneurs, and I'm sure I did it first, don't get that, understand that, micromanage. If I teach young Stevie to do this, it's going to take me twice as long versus if I just do it on my own, right? Yeah. But now Stevie is better at it someday. It frees me up to work on the vision or whatever I should be working on. Back to your point of wearing too many hats and, micromanaging. And, even going back to one of my favorite examples of that is the first voice of Mickey Mouse was Walt Disney. Yeah, think about that. And so, and at the time, and it just still is, but Mickey Mouse was everything and the only thing, and it was basically, a cartoon that was Disney at the time. But Walt himself was, a micromanager saying, no one could be Mickey but me. Like, think of how different the world could be today if you didn't relinquish that, and obviously relinquish a million other things. So, no, I love this. Something I want to end with here, Steve. I don't know if you've thought about this, but a one-word theme for 2022 for professionally and personally. So 2 different words. One, and they may be the same, but one that you want to make your theme focus for your business, and one for your personal. Because while we didn't have enough time, what I also love about Stephen Kearley is the balance you've always had. And as entrepreneurs, we burn it, but you've always made sure that your passions, which you have a lot, from wine to music to hockey to golf to traveling to your wife and 4 kids, never allowed that, at least from my point. You've always made that a key priority in your life to remind you what the hell we're working so hard for, right? So yeah, if you have one word for professional, one word for personal.
Well, yeah, that's a great question. So I'm a goal setter, and I firmly believe in 2 things. The thing about setting goals is you become accountable to something, right? And you have a path for what you want to accomplish during the course of the year. And so I set goals. I share the goals for 2 reasons. I want to be held accountable, especially in my business. I'll stand up in front of my employees every chance I get and share my goals for the year, because I want to be accountable. I want them to say, hey, how are we doing on moving towards this? Or are we, how close are we to the goal you set? And the other thing, the magic thing about setting goals, when you share them, people want to help you. Most people want to help people. Not everybody, but most people do, in my experience in life. So when I share a goal, whether personal or professional, somebody always, hey, wait a minute, I know somebody that can maybe help you, introduce you to this guy, or, and that's what, to me, that's the true networking that I touched on earlier is how do I help you? Who can I connect John with?
Right.
That John in this.
And listen, by the way, I didn't, I should. So you saw me in 2004 speak. Not only have you hired me, you've had your EO chapter in Toronto bring me in. You've recommended me. Then you got me on the faculty of the MIT EO Master's Program that I've spoken at every year for 12, 15 years. I mean, Steve, just from, meeting you, you walk the talk. I want to make sure people realize, Steve, when you meet someone, you think about how can I help them? You truly do. And I believe it's also how can you talk? Now you're helping two people, right? You've introduced me to a company that could use me, and they're thankful to you, and I'm thankful to you. And, that's such a great
win-win-win.
Right.
And that's how life should be. So I would say to you, to answer your question, we went down another rabbit hole.
Yeah.
But to answer your question, it wouldn't be one word, it would be two. When I sit back on December 31st and look back on 2022, I want to be able to say this: mission accomplished. We hit our goals, we hit our targets, we became a better business, our employees grew professionally and personally, and I want to look back at all my goals and say, mission accomplished.
And will that also be the same, or do you have a different one personally?
No, I even though I set personal goals, again, I want to look back and say, yeah, we got them. Because it's so easy just to get lazy, right? And just kind of, I'll get to it next week. And then the next week becomes next month. And all of a sudden, the quarter went by. And, another great quote, and maybe we can end on this, is Bill Gates. People often overestimate what they can accomplish in a year and underestimate what they can accomplish in 10.
Yeah.
Well, I use that as motivation. Is if I set some goals this year, I want to accomplish them. I won't overestimate what I can do this year. I want to be realistic, but I want to be able to say, yep, got it. Ticked off the list.
Love it. Love it. Steve, you are an ATM machine of great ideas that really get to the soul of a business, of why people want to be part of, both from a customer and an employee standpoint. So I can't thank you enough for being on the Customer Service Revolution podcast. I want to thank our listeners for another episode of the Customer Service Revolution podcast, and we will see you next week. Thank you, Steve.
My pleasure. Thank you, John.
We love to read your reviews. Please be sure to share your comments and let us know what you're enjoying most on the podcast. And to hear more episodes, be sure to subscribe now on iTunes, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. Thanks for listening and being part of the Customer Service Revolution.